Well, I just want to say I sit on court's criminal law subcommittee, so a lot of these bills are going to be coming before me, and I'm certainly I'm consistent with the JCRC and your position, and I do find it abhorrent of the Arizona law, and we'll do the best that we can to keep it out. Just the reality is that it probably will pass the House. But I think that we just have to work on the Senate, and probably it would die there. And I'm not, that's just hopefully. But we'll certainly be there, and on the House courts, I'm sitting there, and that's one thing that I've asked groups to do is to alert me to those bills. I am the party whip on the courts committee, and so I need to be alerted during session. I mean, things are hectic. Members are typically, sometimes they're not on the dais because they're defending their bill in another committee. And so it's my job to make sure that everybody's there to take their votes. And because it's so important. And a lot of times, sometimes bad bills get through because somebody was not there. So please let me know. And but my flag is definitely up on that. Thank you.
Okay, and I think we're getting down. We'd have time for maybe one or two more questions. So, how about here and then over there? Right there.
This question is for Delegate Fuller-Korn. You were talking about a 529 plan. You mentioned it for autistic people. Are you also talking about other developmental disabled people who would have an opportunity for that type of bill?
Yes, we definitely are, and we've been working with Legislative Services in Richmond on a draft of that legislation. And it would definitely be broader than just autism, and I can definitely speak with you afterwards and give you some more details, and then work with you. We're working with numerous groups as well as some constituencies, and so I'd love to share that information with you, and I'll fill you in.
Thank you. And yes, over there. Debbie's going over there with the mic. Yeah. Let's give her a second.
Thank you. If this is the last question, I'm going to make it a doozy. At the sake of touching the third rail, I'd like to ask all the legislators about gun control. The Washington Post has identified in their recent series that Virginia has some of the most ineffective and loose gun control legislation in the nation. And Mayor Bloomberg and all the other mayors have come out and said, let's stop Virginia guns from getting into the hands of criminals throughout the East Coast. Is there any hope for Virginia to become, to have a sensible and rational gun control policy?
By all means, yeah.
I did, okay. First of all, no, I don't believe there's any hope, at least not for the next year. But last year, I put in a bill to make guns illegal on school property. And I was visited by the NRA, but that was the only group that talked to me about it. It never got out of subcommittee. It never got anywhere. And I think that that is one of the major places that we have to attack the problem. So I'm looking at reformulating the bill and putting it back in. But I have to tell you, I do not want to be one of these legislators who says, and no one here has ever said this, but I put something in 10 years ago and I put it in again and again and again. I don't think that's really being a leader. I think if your bill fails, you need to look at what you can do to lead the charge next time in a slightly different way to get that bill passed. And that's what I'm going to do with No Guns on School Grounds.
Yeah, could I say something real quick? Is anybody else? Last year was really an eye-opener for those of us who've never been there before, amongst the 23-person freshman class. But I remember one day, I think we voted on 14 gun bills in one day. I've never put up so many red lights in my life. But one of the red light is our legislators speak for no. One bill that was interesting to me is Mark Sickles put in a bill that apparently the Fairfax County code enforcement guys went out to a daycare center and found a gun laying on a table or in a drawer or something. and they tried to cite the guy for having a gun in a daycare center, or a gun accessible to children in a daycare center. And apparently the guy called the NRA, and it was pointed out that Fairfax County does not have the authority to regulate guns in daycare centers. So Mark put a bill in to give the county the authority to regulate guns in daycare centers. And that bill actually got 10 votes against it in the House of Delegates, okay? Just to give you an idea of the fervor with which a lot of people feel towards this issue. And we couldn't even get a unanimous vote on that bill. So it's a different environment down there. It's a different culture in the rest of the state. You know, half my family comes from Franklin County, Virginia. It's my mother's side. And, you know, they have an entirely different view of gun issues than people up here do. And you have to remember that when you go down there. But it's, you know, I'm equally pessimistic about much change in that. And, you know, hopefully there'll be some things we can find common ground on. But it's usually the law is going the other direction on most of the bills we see down there.
And I'll just add briefly that, like this, as with so many other issues, you know, major public policy decisions are not really decided in January, February, March in Richmond. They're decided on a Tuesday in November. So if you care about all of these issues, you know, it's a numbers game, and you've got to change the balance of power with regards to the legislators who support your positions on those issues. That's not a partisan statement. That's just a mathematical statement. You need 51 votes in the House and 21 votes in the Senate to make a bill become a law. So you need to figure out who those 51 members of the House are, and if they're not currently there, then you need to get rid of the ones that are there and get new ones in.
If I could just add on very, very briefly, you know, sometimes it's difficult or frustrating always having to play defense down in the General Assembly, but I think some of the most important things that we do are to play defense. And for instance, was last year when Bob Marshall, Delegate Bob Marshall, and also Delegate Moorfield had introduced legislation that would make it illegal for Virginia to enforce any kind of law with regard to carbon emissions. And you know, I was actually proud that we stayed still. We didn't change the law. We went ahead and kept something that looked like it might get through, and were able to kill it. Know what it is that we're playing defense on and mobilize accordingly. I think as Scott and Dave said, you know, in Virginia, it's not likely that we're going to be changing the law in major ways, but we can, I think, very successfully make sure that some of the bad bills don't get through. I think, you know, two great examples of where we need to be a little bit more proactive and where we need to draw the line on the proactive side is the gun show loophole. There's absolutely no reason on the planet why we can't use technology to make sure that the right people or the wrong people aren't allowed to be able to get weapons. If you really mean what you say about, you know, that you got upstanding citizens shouldn't be denied their Second Amendment right, you have nothing to fear from something that simple. As the representative that represents George Mason University, the other one that we're playing defense on this year that I understand there's going to be a bill introduced on, gets to the issue of guns on campuses. And right now, each campus, each Board of Visitors has the opportunity to say whether they are allowed to carry or not carry on that campus. And different universities have made different decisions, but that is a decision that ought to be squarely in the hands of that local Board of Visitors. And there will be a bill introduced this year that will take that out of the hands of the Board of Visitors and potentially allow anybody with a gun to be on any campus in Virginia. So make sure that we're all communicating together in terms of what these issues are. And if you feel passionately about them, make sure your voices are heard and that your voices are heard early. The General Assembly is an odd thing. It's an odd duck. Bills live or die in subcommittee in the House, and subcommittees can be anywhere from 5 to 9 people. That's a really small number of folks that are making some very important decisions early in the morning. So anyways, work with us, use us as your resources, and thank you again for your advocacy in this whole process.